todos. Muchísimas gracias. Veo que ya se está empezando a sumar la gente. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos en una sesión más de nuestra serie de charlas por live streaming. Para nuestra sesión de hoy se registraron muchísimas personas, así que daremos un poco de tiempo para que la gente se siga conectando. Mientras, les recuerdo que pueden contactarnos a través de Zoom en la sección de chat. Me encantaría saber de dónde se están conectando. Sé que la mayoría de las personas que se registraron están en Latinoamérica, pero me gustaría mucho saber de qué países se están sumando. Tanya and Zachary, you both are based in New York, correct? Is that where Shareably is headquartered?
Yes, that's right. Although everyone is working from home, so it's all a little different right now.
Yes, yes. Wow, por aquí ya nos están diciendo, tenemos gente de México, Colombia, Brasil, Guatemala, México. Wow, México trae bastante equipo, Argentina, Perú. Muchas gracias a todos, gente de Colombia. Bienvenidos. Wow, sí, tenemos muchos países. Bienvenidos a todos. Aprovecho también estos minutitos adicionales para recordarles que la próxima semana tenemos un panel sobre e-commerce con la participación de Rappi, de comparaencasa.com y de America's Market Intelligence. No se lo pierdan, vamos a explorar una de las industrias que quizás es de las que más disrupción ha visto este año, y seguramente hay muchas lecciones que aprender de estas tres mujeres expertas en el tema. Les recuerdo también que esta sesión se llevará a cabo en inglés y podrán acceder a ella en nuestra página web, que es lamac.org. Ahora voy a pedir a alguien del equipo que lo ponga en el chat para que tengan el link. And well, now switching to English, I see that a lot of people have connected now. My name is Monica Davila. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications at LAMAC. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Tanya Juki and Zachary Hoffman from Shareably. Tanya is the CEO and founder of this great company, and Zachary is Senior Account Executive. They will be sharing with us a fantastic presentation that captures the essence of branded content as a form of advertising, and why is it so important for advertisers and publishers to pay attention to the trends and the best practices, and why this matters so much for brand perception. Shareably is the world's largest system of social performance data for brands and advertisers who want to understand the impact of their cross-platform campaigns, with a comprehensive monitoring in more than 55 countries. But to tell us more about Shareably and talk to us about branded content in Latin America, I leave you with Tanya Juki and Zachary Hoffman. Please be sure to leave us your questions via Zoom, and I will return for a Q&A at the end. Tanya, Zachary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Monica. We're so happy to be here, and thank you to everyone who is joining. It looks like we have so many people from all over Latin America, and we couldn't be more thrilled to be talking about why we're so excited about the opportunity that we're seeing for publishers to really maximize the value of the audiences that you're creating on social media in order to really drive revenues. Because I think particularly as advertisers right now are under a lot of pressure to think more about how to connect authentically with consumers, you guys are really the answer. You have the content, you have the audiences, so we think it's a great time to be having this conversation. So let's dive in. And then Zach, do you want to just give a quick intro of what you do? I know you'll be driving most of this presentation, but just so everyone's heard of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work on our sales team, primarily new business. And then talking to a lot of existing clients and I work mostly in the media and entertainment space, so with a lot of TV networks as well as publishers who know a lot about branded content. So.
Terrific. And most of the insights that you'll be seeing, Zach has been really driving, putting together for you. So a little bit about us, and thank you to Monica for the wonderful introduction. Shareably's mission and why I founded the company was really about placing data at the heart of decision making. And you know what that means for most of our customers, and we sell to both the sort of buy side as well as the sell side, and we partner, is three things. One is understanding your audiences more fully. So even when your audiences are actively engaged with one of your TV shows on social media, he or she is still interacting with brands, publishers, celebrities. And it's so valuable for you to understand what that map looks like. So that's how we pull together audience intelligence. The second piece is around actionable content analytics, because, you know, when you have potentially hundreds or thousands of pieces of content over a time period, many different social pages, many of the people who are actually in the trenches day to day putting the content together just don't have enough time to really analyze what's working, what's not. They have it in their gut, but they can't be looking out to the marketplace and seeing what's working there, so you can bring that into your practice. And that's where we believe data really comes in, to sort of say, hey, what is the world or what is my industry really doing, and how can I adjust how I go to market around that? And then finally, bringing it all together with measurement. So true competitive benchmarks, advertising effectiveness, right? Because if you're going to be entrusted by your advertisers with hopefully millions of dollars for your branded content, you need to be able to help them understand what they got in return. And it has to be more than just clicks and likes, right? It needs to go to brand value for them. So we kind of look across that whole workflow. How do we do it? Very quickly, just so that you have a sense. So Shareably begins by mapping essentially the whole world from a bottoms up perspective. So Monica mentioned we're in over 55 countries for measurement. That means that we've defined all the advertisers, all the TV shows, all the networks, all the publications, and every single day we go and collect everything that's published, both paid and organic, so that you can have reliable metrics when you're researching either for yourself, for your own metrics, or for a competitor, or potentially for an advertiser who you want to partner with. All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I'm so excited about branded content and what's happening in 2020. Now, for those of you who have ever joined any of my presentations before, I have been harping on about this content format for a really long time, way before it was actually a really big thing. But now, you know, it is definitely a major monetization vertical in the US. And, you know, based on the activity that we're seeing in Latin America, we believe that there's big opportunities for growth and monetization for all of the publishers and creators right now who have done the hard work of finding your audience, creating content that matters, and bringing it to them because it's so valuable and it's really what advertisers need. So why should you care about this format? Well, actually, let's start by, Zach, why don't you introduce what branded content is overall, and we can talk a little bit about, you know, why we care about this format.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, branded content is a form of advertising, and it's basically, you know, sponsored posts on social, so whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, any of the major social channels, including YouTube. We are basically showing that, you know, in these cases, Tasty is sponsored by Bailey's. And so they put together a recipe with Bailey's, and we have the Lakers with UCLA Health. So it's really any kind of partnership between a publisher is how we'll refer to them through the rest of the presentation, but a publisher can be a TV network, really anyone who has a social presence. You know, and on Facebook and Instagram, branded content has to have that handshake flag. So that's an official designation by Facebook that it is sponsored and branded content, and everyone should be using that legally. And then, for the purposes of this presentation, branded content isn't the same thing as dark posts. We do measure that in other ways through our ad effectiveness products, which we'll talk a bit about at the end. But these are generally public posts that are on the main pages of publishers.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing, and if you just pop back to that last slide,
Sure.
Zach, I mean, I think the cool thing about this, and Zach sort of led with saying, hey, this is an advertising format, right? But the cool thing about it is it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it to the consumer who just sees it as good content. And it really doesn't feel like it even to the advertiser either, right? It feels like a content experience. It's real, it's in the moment. I mean, the example that we're showing you here, you can actually see Bailey's in the background, but sometimes there will be branded content where the advertiser isn't even sort of big and prominent and featured. So it sort of harkens back to, maybe a more traditional product placement, but it's much more integrated. And for the consumer, they really are really open to it because it's just another way to get great content. And I think that's what's so neat about it is it really sort of takes the existing advertising model for social and for video and just gives us something that's new and that we think really, really keeps the consumer happy. So I've probably already started talking through this, but, why is this interesting? Why should you care? Why is this worth your time to learn more about? I'll sort of say, and Zach chime in because I know you pulled a lot of these stats, but, I think of it from your perspective in two ways. The first way is you're not going to hurt your audience in a way that you might if you overloaded them with advertising on social that felt jarring, right? It's going to feel normal. It's going to feel authentic. In some cases, it's going to feel additive to their social experience with you. In many cases, you already have the content, so you can recycle things that you've already shot or that you've already prepared. It doesn't always need bespoke production. And it's just, we're just seeing stats that are through the roof, right? And I'm just going to read this out. I mean, the average branded post from Latin American brands, wow, was shared 145 times more. That's amazing. Can you explain what that first bullet point means, Zach?
Yeah, absolutely. So that means that, they were shared over 145 times more than on their organic presences.
Wow.
So they're just getting a lot of ROI from branded content. And that's why brands work with publishers, because brands themselves, typically, and it varies by brand, of course, but they don't usually have a huge social presence themselves. Yeah. So it's why they can rely on, TV networks or publishers to reach that audience that they wouldn't otherwise be able to.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's right. And I think, again, even the advertisers that used to just rely on very, very traditional ads, I think are now, particularly because of COVID, knowing that they need to be more creative and that they need to, look a little higher when it comes to how to connect with the consumer. So this is something that, we talk about, to our advertiser partners and in a lot of marketplace studies. But for the traditional advertiser who might be saying, why can't I just get the cheapest possible reach myself on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or YouTube? Why do I need to partner with a publisher? And it comes down to, what Zach just said, right? It's, people want to hear from you guys when it comes to video experiences that matter. That's your business, right? Content is a business. For most advertisers, they make sauce, they make cheese, they make wine, they don't make video. And even the same video coming from an advertiser frequently isn't as likely to be viewed or as likely to be positively perceived because consumers don't even really think of them as content creators. So there's just value just in partnering with you and in having the video come from you, right? Even before you think about production value and storytelling. The second part of it is, and we've done a ton of advertising effectiveness studies now over the last few years, is that it really works. You know, it really moves the needle when it comes to audiences feeling differently about a brand, feeling more open to learning more about a brand. And particularly now in this coronavirus global pandemic, it's something that consumers feel is accretive and valuable to their experience. So, you know, it isn't just a brand that's just trying to sell them something, right? It's a brand who's partnering up on content that matters with guys like you, and that's something that consumers really find valuable. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Zach, but
Yeah, no, I mean, building off your point earlier, I think that part of the magic of branded content is that it doesn't feel like advertising. You know, it feels very organic. It feels like an organic post. I'm sure we've all had the experience of kind of scrolling through our feeds and like liking something that we didn't even realize was an ad and kind of looking at it and be like, oh, I guess that was branded content. To the extent to which you even realize it, I'm sure there's lots of times where you don't. And that's kind of the point, is that you can, you know, I don't want to say covertly, but you can kind of sneak an ad in without, you know, people even realizing that it's an ad. So it's, yeah, similar to product placement.
yeah,
You know,
it's not jarring. Yeah, it doesn't hurt the content experience, right?
Exactly. It feels like a natural part of their social experience. You know, when an influencer pops up, or, you know, a TV show or TV network that's kind of plugging similar content to what they're producing for their TV shows, you see that, you know, it doesn't feel like an ad. It feels like something else that they would want to see on social. Whereas other times ads can feel interrupting. But yeah, I mean, also, you know, on the subject of kind of why we should care, if you look here, you know, there's been over 17, almost 18,000 posts of branded content, you know, across Latin America in the first half of 2020, and over 13 million actions on those posts. I mean, that's a lot of posts, that's a lot of clicks, you know, a lot of likes, a lot of shares, a lot of reactions. And we see that there's been over 358 million branded video views in the first half of the year, you know, which is a ton, and that's just on Facebook, by the way. But if we look at, you know, how it's trending, you know, year over year, I think it's down a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on this year that aren't normal as far as COVID and everything. And, you know, we've seen similar trends throughout. But if you look over the past couple months, it's really picked up starting in April. So there's a bit of a dip in March here. And then as you go through April, May and June are really setting new highs for year over year and just branded content in general in consecutive months. So, you know, it's really something that consumers are open to, and we find that they're increasingly more open to. And you see pretty similar trends. We broke out TV here as well, since we know that's kind of the wheelhouse of a lot of people that are on here. But, you know, you see a similar pattern throughout. And then if you look at, you know, how it's trending over time, you can see that the biggest day for branded content posts was actually February 28th. And it was a lot of posts from Exelton Mexico and Sky Sports Mexico on their celebrity versus contenders competition. You can see it kind of dips a bit immediately after the pandemic. I think that, you know, people had a lot of other things to worry about, but then it's kind of picked up since then. And you can see here a big day was when Liga Mexico canceled their season for 2020. You know, and then as far as what do consumers think about branded content? I mean, I think that this is something that, you know, publishers, producers, particular people with a huge following on social, they don't want to feel like they're cheapening it by doing branded content. They want to know, like, do consumers want to see this? Is it going to affect what they think of us? And what we found is that, you know, 50% of people now think that branded content is interesting. You know, 46% think it's relevant to them, 44% think it's authentic, and 39% say they're more likely to buy from a brand that is associated with their favorite TV show. So, you know, what we're really seeing here is that people are very open to branded content. They do find it authentic, and it makes them more likely to buy the product, which is something we've seen in a lot of our ad effectiveness studies as well. And also, if you look here, we've actually kind of trended this out over time. So the gray is October 2017. The light blue is October 2019, and the other blue is May 2020, which was taken kind of during COVID. So you can see that really consumers' openness to this has been increasing over time, and it probably will only continue to increase. And then, you know, from here, we're going to kind of go into a lot of the top publishers and the top sponsors of branded content. So I think that you'll find that, you know, the top publishers are, this is for TV. The first section is going to be on TV, and then we'll zoom out to the rest of kind of Latin American branded content. But you can see number one here is TUDN, followed by Big Brother Brazil, which is pretty prominent throughout the rankings, and they have a ton of top posts. And then Expansión, and we have here TNT Brazil, ESPN Brazil, and MTV Brazil. I think I saw some folks from Brazil earlier on, one of the many countries that are represented, but there's a lot of different, advertisers represented here, and you can just see that this has really been successful. And if you look at the top sponsors on Facebook, you'll see that AT&T is number one, followed by Grupo Bimbo and Gillette and Sports Betting TV. We also see Burger King on here, and Nissan. And so a lot of different brands, which I think is interesting. You have CPG and Gillette, you have sports betting with, a lot of sports sponsors as well. And then you even have fast food and automotive. So really a wide range. It just goes to show you can really be working with any sponsors. But one thing, for those of you kind of in the sales biz on the line, these are really great prospects to go out to. They're obviously very open to branded content. They're already doing it and they're doing it well. So they're great advertisers to approach. And we'll be putting this presentation up on LAMAC's website as well after this. So, and then if we flip over to Instagram real quick, you'll see that, some of these are on both lists, but Big Brother Brazil is now number one on Instagram. And then, you'll see a lot of kind of sporting presences here, TNT Sports, and that's TNT Sports Latin America overall, and Sport TV. So a lot of kind of news and sports news is big, even during this pandemic. And then if we look at the top sponsors on Instagram, you see Gillette is number one now. Nissan's on here again, as well as Sporting Bets, but there's a lot of different brands here as well. And then, if we look at what the top branded content publishers are doing, we can see, a variety of forms here, but the video is really the most successful, and that content directly addressing COVID concerns are leading to really high engagement as well as sports content. So, consumers want to hear from, from publishers about COVID. They're turning to, TV networks and news programs, et cetera, to learn more. And, they don't mind if a post is sponsored as long as it's coming from a good place. We see that Big Brother Brazil really dominated Instagram. They got all top 15 of the top posts, and they're really able to create compelling content that they know their audience very well. And then sports updates that were branded also got a lot of engagement. So people really want to know what's going on in sports when we can have them back and so on.
In terms of
zooming.
Zach. In terms of what you saw, did this mix of content feel similar to what you've observed in other markets like the US market, or did you find there was more repurposed content? Like, what did you sort of see as you were analyzing specifically the markets in Latin America?
Yeah, absolutely. We found, some posts were very similar. So like sports is going to be very similar, across the globe really. But the only difference is sports in Latin America are obviously going to be, almost exclusively soccer. Exelton is on there too, the big reality TV show Marathon. But, other than that, we found video to be maybe a little bit more dominant in the US comparatively. But that was just for TV. And then we found slightly more custom spots in the US. But what we did observe is that in the US branded content is a little bit, it's been around a little bit longer, I think. So I think that we'll continue to see more custom content coming out of Latin America as time goes on, because we really saw, kind of an increase in engagement, especially these last few months. So we think that people are doing more and more of it and will only continue to improve.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's something that you might have pointed out to me for the first time, which was increasingly what we've started to see is campaigns that have maybe a little bit of custom content and then some repurposed content as well. So it isn't always one or the other, that they'll actually be combining those two. Yeah,
absolutely. We saw a lot of both, especially in top posts. So zooming out a bit to kind of the wider world of branded content, and in terms of not just television, this is all Latin America focused. But, we see a lot more kind of sports teams in these rankings, as well as like kind of more traditional digital publishers. So we see some food sites, Kiwi Limon, Taste Made Brazil is on here. And then we see a lot of soccer teams, or football, excuse me. So, we see the Pumas are you know, and they're number 5 actually this year, but we saw that they didn't even make one post in the top 500 last year. So I think that that should be really encouraging for, you know, anyone who's on the line who is thinking about doing branded content but hasn't done a lot of it yet. I mean, look at, you know, somewhere like the Pumas, or we'll see more later on, but basically you can, you know, go from doing, you know, very little branded content or not even having very engaging branded content to being in the top 5 publishers in, you know, a year's time. So and then if we look at, you know, Puma's growth specifically, it really kicked off, you know, this year. So starting, you know, in January and through, you know, May and June, you see a lot of posts and much higher than they've ever been, especially if you look at last January through May, both in terms of number of posts and engagement. You know, and then if we flip over to, you know, Instagram, you see here, there are some TV presences still, you know, in the overall landscape. Big Brother Brazil is number 2, and Esporte Interativo is number 3. And then, you know, I also wanted to highlight Boca's Junior, you know, the soccer team as well. They went from being, I think also not in the top 500 last year to number 4. And Big Brother Brazil went from being number 15 last year all the way to number 2. So once again, you know, really anyone can kind of jump into it and start producing good branded content and just rise in these rankings, get a ton of, you know, engagement, and ultimately monetize that and make a lot of money off of their branded content. And this is just kind of looking at the Boca Juniors growth over the last few months. Now, if we look at advertisers, you know, so these are for, you know, any publisher, not just TV, but we look at Tecate as number 1, you know, followed by McCormick. And then, you know, we have Quaker on here. So a lot of CPG brands in general, but then you have, you know, Huevo, San Juan, and Victorinox. So really, you know, a wide variety of sponsors, but CPG in particular, which makes sense since there's a lot of, you know, food publications as well. They're high up there. But I think that this is really going to be one of the most important slides for you guys to take away from this presentation. What we see here is the difference between the engagement from the branded posts versus the organic content of the sponsor. I mean, so if you look at this, even, you know, Tecate is probably the best as far as organic amongst them. And you still see it's like over a double, I think, in terms of engagement. So they're getting twice as much engagement by partnering with these various publishers who have a huge audience. And McCormick as well, you know, it's getting way more engagement through their branded posts than they are otherwise. So this is really why they should be working with you. They're just never going to get this kind of engagement on their organic pages. And, you know, and then if we look at the top advertisers on Instagram, it's a little bit more varied. We have, you know, retail on here, Adidas, Gillette razors, we have olive oil, and then, you know, airlines, even Qatar Airways and Nissan. So kind of a wide variety of sponsors on Instagram. And we find that increasingly, you know, there's more and more branded content going on Instagram. But a similar story in terms of engagement. I mean, just way more engagement for Gillette. You know, even Adidas has a pretty large organic presence, but look at the difference between their sponsored posts versus their regular posts. And then, you know, looking at patterns as far as what we see is like what's working for branded content generally, we found that video was really powerful overall. So video was 9 of the top 10 pieces of content in terms of top branded content overall, which is interesting. And we found that, you know, a lot of the times the branded content that worked, and we talked about this a bit earlier, but is the content that felt organic. It's these recipe videos that incorporate, you know, something like McCormick or maybe Tecate or, you know, other CPG brands into their advertising so that it feels like something that they would do anyways, that they would be using McCormick spices. So we found that, you know, Kiwi Limon and Tastemade are on here a lot, incorporating their advertisers in their recipes. And then, you know, we found that TV and entertainment were really the ones that were able to focus more on COVID with their branded content. So yeah, that was, you know, kind of the top posts and top publishers overall. To tell you a little bit more about other data that you can use to have successful branded content, this would be more during the pre-sales process. But we have a feature called Affinity. And what it does is it measures cross-engagement between different pages. So you can see that for like maybe Adidas has a lot of, you know, cross-engagement with a lot of the football teams, whether it's Boca Junior or Pumas. And you can see that we have this measured across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So we're able to see, you know, if someone is engaging with Boca Juniors or someone's engaging with Big Brother Brazil, who else are they engaging on with social? And we think that those other advertisers that they're engaging with, those are just natural people to approach for sponsorship. So we have on here, you know, ESPN and Modelo have a huge overlap. So we can see here it's 152 is the score. What that means is that engagers of ESPN are 152 times more likely to also engage with Modelo than the average user on social. So this is an index compared to the average user. And you can see a few on here as well. So Domino's Pizza Guatemala is up there. It's actually higher than Modelo with 263. Poshmark at 223 times. That's the resale service, and Coca-Cola Mexico at 109 times. And then other ways that you can measure kind of the success of a campaign. We have a few ad effectiveness products. So, you know, we have everything from brand lift studies to our CPI index is kind of one holistic number that sums up, you know, how well the campaign did compared to similar campaigns. So this 5.3 number says that, you know, if it was for instance, Adidas with Pumas, it would be 5.3 times better than other campaigns with, you know, retail or sneaker brands and soccer teams. So, you know, we're able to calculate this, whether it's views or actions. You know, we can make an apples to apples comparison. And this is really powerful for advertisers. We also have a behavior lift metric, which shows that, and something that's important to a lot of advertisers is, you know, we show those numbers showing that obviously, you know, TV networks, TV shows, and so on just have a much bigger presence than, you know, most CPG advertisers, certainly, and a lot of other advertisers as well. But what a lot of advertisers want to do by partnering with someone with a big social presence, like a lot of the people on this line, is to grow their own social presence. So what we're able to show with this is that someone that engaged with the campaign actually went on to continue engaging with the advertiser after the campaign. And this is really powerful. So if you ever have a campaign brief or an RFP in which the advertiser expresses that growing their social presence is very important, you should definitely consider using a social media behavior lift solution. And then we also do brand lift studies. So we're actually able to see, you know, if people interact with or are activated by a campaign. And then we go on and survey those people to see if were they more likely to purchase Amazon Echo Dot Kids Edition. And we see here that they were way more likely. So the group exposed to the advertisement were 164% more likely to want to purchase Amazon's Echo Dot Kids Edition than those who did not engage with the advertisement. So, you know, this really shows more than anything that branded content works. And that's what advertisers want to see. They want to know, you know, we spent all this money on a campaign, but like, did it move the needle? Did it make people think more of our brand? Did it make people more likely to buy our product? You know, that's what they're going to be able to take back and say, you know, yes, we really want to work with Big Brother Brazil again, or we really want to work with HBO Mexico, or we really want to work with, you know, any kind of advertiser or publisher. So that's really everything that, you know, we had planned as far as the formal presentation. We'd love to open it up to some questions. I think that Monica was going to field those, so I'll hand that over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been very interesting, and yes, we have questions. So let's jump right into the questions because I want to be able to ask as much as possible. Are there any don'ts or any aspects that you think should be avoided when creating branded content?
Gosh, I will take that one. And it's easier said than done, right? But it's something that we've seen many TV networks and publishers struggle with here in the US is don't compromise on your creative capability. Sometimes advertisers, particularly the first time they're doing it or early, they want to do branded content. They want it to be content. They want to partner with you because they love what you do, but then they also want it to be like an ad. And if you cave to that, it won't work. And then they will turn to you and be like, this didn't work, right? Why didn't this work? Why did you do this to me? So I think really sticking to what you do best, which is creating these unique, powerful experiences, and don't, you know, the reason why the advertisers are coming to you is because they don't want their agency to make them an ad. So don't act like their agency who makes them an ad, you know, really sort of bring your creative vision. Obviously you collaborate, obviously you think about that, but the only times we've really seen things go wrong is when too much was given up in that process. So that would just be one don't. I don't know, Zach, do you have another don't that you'd add?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would say, yeah, just don't, you know, don't like read the room, I guess. It's not really a don't, but like, you know, don't advertise something that's, you know, tone deaf or is, you know, not kind of with the times. I think that we've seen, like, especially during the pandemic, some ads that were like, oh, like this is your, you know, going out dress or whatever. And you have to remember that maybe that's not something that you should be encouraging right now. So I think just like, you know, staying relevant, reading the news and knowing that you're not, you know, doing anything that would be perceived badly. Just take a step back and think about how you would look at something as a consumer, especially in context.
Perfect. Another question that we have is which social platforms does the affinity feature cover, and is it possible to narrow down by country?
Yes. Yeah, please.
Oh yeah, yes, you can definitely narrow down by country. So, you know, if you exclusively work in Argentina or Guatemala or wherever you're located, you can just look at affinities for those countries. And, you know, as mentioned earlier, we have 55 plus countries. I actually think is it over 70 now or over 65?
Probably,
something like that.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah. So yeah, you know, most of the globe really, as far as where they're developed markets, certainly. And so, yeah, and then our affinity covers Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So it's cross-platform, which is really great.
Perfect. Somebody is asking if is the measure or analytics done in real time or afterwards?
Yeah, so you can look at it either way. You know, I think what we've found is that most publishers, like advertisers, will talk about real time, but you won't really be making adjustments in real time. So sometimes it's nice to set up like maybe a real-time leaderboard so people can see live stats, but then the measurement is typically done as a look back because, you know, you want to, particularly if you want to know something like, did this make people more likely to buy the product? Sometimes that takes people a little bit of time. You know, they'll see something, they'll digest it, you give it a day or two, and then they start to feel differently. So most of that is not done like direct response. But yeah, as far as the live campaign, like seeing the number of video views and the number of shares and clicks and comments, yeah, a lot of that is looked at in real time because it's kind of exciting as it's happening.
Mm-hmm. I see a couple of people ask a similar question, but basically, is there a particular platform that performs better, especially now during the pandemic, which would be the platforms to invest on?
Yeah, so, you know, it will depend on what your content is. As a rule, the greatest amount of branded content engagement for audiences is on Instagram and Facebook in that order. I would say Facebook is probably the furthest ahead in terms of the format itself, right? They rolled out the branded content guidelines. I think it was in April of 2016. Am I getting that right, Zach? I think it was 2016.
Yes, I believe
yeah, so it's the most established format for it. But we're really seeing people put together campaigns that are cross-platform in nature. It's usually at least 2 and often 3 platforms at the same time. So it's typically never like just a Facebook branded content campaign anymore, but like a year ago it was. So, you know.
Are consumers still open to branded content during COVID-19? What is your perspective?
More than ever, right? And I mean, I don't know, Zach, if you've got that, if you want to flick back to that slide real quick, because that blew my mind when I first saw it. But yeah, look, I think that, you know, if anything, consumers are not, you know, they're definitely wanting to back advertisers who are going to be socially responsible and in touch with the times, and really focused on, you know, protecting communities and society. But certainly, you know, certainly they seem very open. I don't know if you want to just voice over this one, Zach, because this one was stunning.
Yeah, absolutely. What we found is that, yeah, people are way more open to branded content than they have been in the past. And this was taken very much in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis. This is May 17th to 21st, this was fielded. But we found the highest numbers that we've ever gotten in terms of people saying that branded content is interesting and that it makes them more likely to buy from a brand and that it's authentic. So we find that people are very open to it. It's just about doing it tastefully and just being aware of what's happening.
Mm-hmm. And people also want to know which markets can you track in Latin America, and can you do it simultaneously?
Yeah, I would say basically all of them. I mean, yeah, certainly, yeah, Central South America. I mean, really, you know, every major market. We work a lot kind of in, you know, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, you know, Guatemala, like a lot of
Chile,
kind of major
Colombia,
countries.
Peru.
Yeah. So really, yeah, you name it. Pretty much everywhere that, you know, everywhere that someone has said they're from on this call, we definitely cover. So.
Perfect. And they also want to know if you have a digital intuitive interface to track down the evolution of a branded content campaign, sort of like a dashboard.
We do, yes. So all of this data, you know, as far as we put it in this kind of nice presentation format, but all of this is very much from our platform. So we pulled this out of our dashboard, which is also, you know, really beautiful. And we just recently launched Insight Studio, which is even more customizable and has kind of a data visualization element, which is really, you know, a choose your own adventure, very customizable dashboard as well. So, you know, feel free to contact us after this as well if you'd like to see more.
Perfect. I think we have time for one more question. What would you say is more effective for a brand, to do a social post in the brand's own social networks, or to partner with a TV brand or publisher?
I will start by saying we support brands in their independent presences on social media, and we think that that is very important. Now that I've said that, I think that if you had to pick one, and particularly if you had to pick one to really make a bet on in terms of dollars, I would back branded content any day of the week. It's particularly now, right? Particularly now because you don't want to be out there just merely, you know, repeating advertising messages. And, you know, there are, right, this slide's beautiful. And, you know, and there are brands like Red Bull that have become content production houses. So if you leave some of those brands to one side, but I mean, they have their own magazine, they've got their own, you know, they put someone in space, they, you know, like they're really invested in it. For the average brand, they're going to get so much more bang for their buck. And, you know, I mean, Zach, if you want to explain what's going on in this slide, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think that this slide is kind of one to really take away from the presentation. If you have to take away one slide, it's that look at how much more engagement, you know, these brands are getting from branded content. So, you know, these are people literally, you know, liking the advertisement. They're saying, I see this and I like this, I identify with this, I want to share this with my friends and followers. So, you know, what we're seeing is that branded content just blows away brands' organic presences for the most part.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tanya and Zachary. This has been really insightful. And from LAMAC's perspective, one of the main drivers that characterize premium video is brand integration. And without a doubt, a brand's value increases when it associates with premium video content on multiple platforms. But we see this especially reflected in the high amount of interactions and conversations across social media derived from premium videos content, which extends the reach and engagement of advertisers and their brands. Thank you so much to Shareably for this presentation, and thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you next week, Tuesday, July 21st, for our e-commerce panel. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions that for some reason we didn't have time to answer, please send it to us, or we will keep them here and we'll find a way to make sure that Shareably has an opportunity to answer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you to everyone at LAMAC, and thank you to everyone for joining. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Monica, and thanks everyone on the line.
Bye.
Thank you so much.